Hello everyone, this is another episode of Digital Shifts, aka Corporate Evolution Tales, and today my guest is Chris Brown. Chris, thank you so much for joining today. How are you?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me. It's a pleasure to be here with you.
Oh yeah, thank you so much. Amazing. Okay, would you like to present yourself, mention about your experience before we will dive into digital transformation?
Sure, yeah. I'm Chris Brown. I'm the CTO at WOW Remote Teams. We do staffing and recruiting services primarily from Latin America. So we're staffing into US companies with Latin American talent. Yeah, I mean, I've been in software and digital transformations for a couple decades now, and I've run multiple companies. We've done everything from software development to app development to e-commerce to now staffing and recruiting. And, there's a lot of technology that goes behind every
Yeah,
single one of those. And there's always transformation, of course. You're always building something new and trying to find a better way or trying to find a way to
right.
automate or trying to just make things better.
Of course. And well, you mentioned about making things better. What do you think? What is digital transformation for you? Let's start from that general question.
I mean, it's making things better, right? This whole modern world that we have going is all about digital technology and how do we really change the way that we work, change the way that we operate, and just do it different. Do it better. What is a better way? I think I've been in this. I've been in business now for many years, and I've watched it change from paper
Mhm.
receipts for every credit card transaction, sliding the
Yeah.
thing and making copies, to everything's digital, everything's online. You don't even need paper receipts for anything anymore. It's kind
Mhm.
of rare to get them, and everything in between, right? So this whole current state of the world is that everything's moving into AI, moving into agents, and moving into
Mhm.
as much automation as we can get to, and just there's this transitional period that's happening. So digital transformation is trying to keep up with that, essentially
Yeah.
knowing where everything is and trying to see where is that. The next step is always unclear. You don't know
Yeah.
what's next, but you're trying to find that step. You're trying to find that thing that's just not there yet, and make that step and figure out what that is. And it's hard.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. And do you think there are specific stages, like any different stages or phases for digital transformation that like companies can go through when starting it?
I mean, it's always, I think the stages are always the pain points. You're always finding what
Mm-hmm.
is hard, especially as a founder, as like as the business leader, in air
Yeah.
quotes. It's always about like, what is that thing that's currently causing us pain? What's stopping
Mm-hmm.
us today? What's causing us
Right.
the most distraction? Right? What is taking so much of my time that I could be better spending on anything, on growth, on
Mm-hmm.
finding new clients, on finding new business lines? Like, is there something that's holding me back? And what is that thing? And what does it look like? And why is it holding me back? Is there a better way to do that? And is that better way hiring somebody who knows how to do that? Is that finding a
Mm-hmm.
consulting company who has an understanding of how that works and how to move forward from there? Or is that building something totally new that hasn't been built before? And
Yeah.
what does that path look like? Because that's never easy.
Agree. And do you think that we can compare digital transformation with the continuous improvement? Like, are they correlated, or digital transformation is more about automation?
No, of course they're correlated. I mean, transformation, I don't know that. I mean, digital transformation is just trying to automate things and moving them into
Right.
whatever the next step of the status quo is. But I think that just transformation in general is always taking that next step. It doesn't, no matter
Mm-hmm.
where you're at currently,
Yeah.
whether or not next step is necessarily digital or not. Figuring out what that is and moving towards it. It's just there's so many
Mm-hmm.
tools now, and so much of this world is digital that that step is
Yeah.
basically always going to be digital, even if that step is another person. Like,
Right.
again, we're a staffing and recruiting company. We do a lot of staffing and recruiting, but everybody we staff is remote. We don't have a physical location, so all of it's digital. All of it's
Mm-hmm.
how does their internet work? Do they live in a small town somewhere? What kind of
Yeah.
connection do they have? What kind of technology are they using, and how are they
Mm-hmm.
connecting? Are you using a VPN? Are you using a remote system somewhere? Are you like, how does the security work for your data? Like, all
Mm-hmm.
of that is digital transformation, because it wasn't things we had to think about 10 years ago. You had somebody in the
Right.
office doing the work. Where did that
Yeah.
data live? Well, it lived in your office, or it lived on your server, or it was
Mm-hmm.
migrating to the cloud. And now it just lives everywhere. Now you have this whole new set of issues of where is all of that? How does that
Yes.
work?
Yeah.
How do we maintain it, and how do we keep it secure, and how do we understand what the process looks like in the middle? And that's all transformation. The whole thing is transformation.
Yeah, agree, definitely. And when speaking about this transformation and how has changed during these years, so do you think there are any specific like processes or like highlights where we can definitely say that okay, this is something that can be optimized or like improved through the digital transformation, like in companies, how they can find these gaps in their processes?
I mean, how do you find the gaps is just, you have to understand your process. I think more than everything, you have to be really clear on what does your process look like and what are your expectations. What is the outcome that you're trying to get to, and what is the current setup. So
Yeah.
I think more than anything, really being clear on where you are and what your expectations are is the driving force for where you're going and how you're going to get there. Because if you know what your process is, as long as it's documented, as long as it's clear, as long as you could hand it off to somebody and it could be done well, then you can think about, okay, well, what parts of that process can be automated? What tools exist right now that could take some of that workload? And are those tools less or expensive or more cost effective than hiring somebody to do that? And then you get into this kind of transitional period where you're talking about, I need somebody in order to help make that transition happen, right? So what does that person look like? What does that role look like? And what does that skill set look like? And then what are the tools that they need in order to make that happen? And then once that starts to happen, then what do I do with that person, right? Because you don't want to hire somebody just to make an automation happen and then fire them. I mean, maybe it's not firing if it's a consultant kind of setup, but if you're bringing on project managers, if you're bringing on POs or some sort of digital transformation person, you're going to want them to act that way in a lot of your business. So you're going to want to be able to do that in multiple steps. So you're going to look at, here's my process for accounts receivable. Here's how that works. So here's all the pieces that we can move into an automation. We can take communication and make that simplified. We can make collections and make that simplified. Okay, well, now my accounting team has this much more time. Now what can they do? Well, now they have a new set of problems that they are attacking and telling you about and bringing to the table and saying, by the way, here's all these other things that we now spend a lot of time on. So now you have a whole new set of things that you get to look at. It doesn't.
Agree. And when we are speaking about these processes, so you mentioned also the people that are participating in it, whether they are like contractors that are helping or they're inside from the company. Do you think that like the experience of these people is directly connected with how smooth the digital transformation can go, or it's more about the technology that you are using during that process?
Well, it's both. I mean, the people are massively important. If you don't have good people, if you don't have a solid team, you're always going to run into more headaches.
Right.
A bad relationship is a bad relationship. It doesn't matter if it's personal or business or anything. You need great people and you need good people around you. And those people need to know what they're doing, and they need to have an understanding of what the technology is, and they need to have an understanding that technology is moving and they need to be moving with it. So if you have great people, it makes everything easier and everything better. It costs more, of course, because they're great people. And if you don't, then it might be harder and it might be insurmountable. If you don't have good people and you're trying to automate processes, you might run into more problems because maybe those people aren't doing the thing they need to do. Maybe they don't know what they need to know. Maybe they're not being proactive about searching for what they don't know in order to figure out what they need to know. And that's it's a forever kind of problem. It's a problem with ourselves, right? This isn't just other people. This is me as well. Like, how do I figure out what I don't know today in order to go learn about it that I know about it, so that I can tell somebody else about it, so that I can it's just a perpetual rolling kind of that's life. It's learning,
Agree, definitely. And while we are learning, I think on like the lessons learned thing where there is a lot of stuff that is coming also from the background or like experience that you have. Do you think that there are any common challenges that are helping us when we are like concentrated on supporting digital transformation? So are there any challenges that you can highlight from your experience that can be like common for other companies too?
I mean, common challenges, again, it goes back to expectations. If you're not clear on where you're trying to get to, not necessarily where you're going, because we don't know where we're going most of the time. You just have an idea of where you're trying to get to. But if you're not clear on how that works and how how that looks as you get there, you're really going to run into a lot of roadblocks because you don't have a defined endpoint, right? You don't have a defined like idea of what it is. You just go, well, I need this to be digital. Okay, well, what does that mean? What does that look like, right? How does that system
Very
look like?
general.
And if you don't know, that's okay. But how do you find that out, or how do you find somebody that has an idea of how does that work? So I think the biggest roadblock is always like the idea of like the 90% solution, right? If you go take any out of the box kind of software, it's going to get you 90% of the way there, and the other 10% is just a massive, expensive hole because it's never going to do exactly what you need because it's not built to do what you need. It's built to do 90% of the problem because that covers most people. So you go into like if you go take a normal CRM and you go, okay, well, I need this specific use case because my business has this particular flow. You're always going to have that problem of like it doesn't do exactly what you're trying to do just right. You have to go find somebody that understands it. You have to find somebody that knows the programming language that they use in their API, and then you have to go implement a tool, and then you have to upkeep that tool, and you roll into this thing. And if you're not very clear on what the expectation is of that thing that you're trying to do, you're going to run into that roadblock of, again, you're at a 90% solution. Now you have to have a person again in order to cover the rest of that solution. So sometimes it's more cost effective just to have an assistant who knows what that process looks like and implement that process until it becomes a big enough problem to now implement an actual solution and then maintain that solution and deal with the cost of that solution. Because, a solution isn't just, okay, well, I wrote some code and now it works. No, you got to write the code, you got to maintain the code, you have to maintain the infrastructure, you have to keep the systems running, you have to keep everything up to date. Like there's just a perpetual work cycle going on for anything that you build, whether that's physical or digital. It's the same kind of thing, and you have to understand that process works.
Now, when we are coming closer to the technologies, I would like to give this question. So do you think there are any specific technologies or like platforms, tools in this market that are helping with digital transformation? And why not? Let's continue with the question of AI, and maybe we can connect them together.
Yeah, of course. I mean, the new AI tools are massively helpful, right? If you have, if you go to Gemini or ChatGPT or Claude or whatever, and you go in there and you say, hey, here is my problem set, help me find a solution, right? As long as your problem set is clearly defined or well defined, or at least pretty well defined, it'll say, hey, by the way, here's the things I know about, and here's ways to attack that, right? And if that's a code problem, right, if that's a software thing, then you can go, okay, help me, what does the boilerplate for that look like, right? What does the basis for that look like? And as long as you know how to implement those kind of things, it'll get you pretty close to the initial outset of an MVP kind of solution, and then you have to build from there. And they're getting better and better. Like the new Claude tools are kind of incredible in their ability to code. But there's always problems. It's always, again, it's building something based on previous knowledge. It's not necessarily coming up with like fancy new crazy tools, but they get you so much closer, right? So again, going back to that idea of like you really need to have an understanding of what your expectations are and what your problem set is, and an understanding of your own processes. And if you have those things, as long as you have those pretty clear, and again, these tools can help you get there, you can input a good prompt into these tools and say, hey, here's my problem set, here's my current process, here's what this all looks like. And it's a lot of work, right? I mean, you have to define all of these things. Like you're not escaping the workload of having to do all this definitional work. But once you have it all done, you can stick it into the AI and say, hey, what do you think about this? What does a good solution look like? And then it'll output, usually a pretty decent option, or at least a good idea of an option or a good direction of an option. And then you can take that and either go to your team and say, hey, what do you guys think about this? And have discussion from there. Or you can find your consultant if you have one, or whoever that kind of that bouncing board is up for ideas for you, and go to them and say, hey, here's what I think, here's what AI thinks that we could possibly do. What do you think about those? And then somebody that knows your systems, hopefully, will be able to say, yeah, that could work, or no, that's a terrible idea. Or it gives you so much. It's like it's a research assistant. It's a thing that knows so much, and it just doesn't know exactly what you're doing. So you need to tell it what you're doing and try to get there. But they're just getting better, right? I mean, a year ago,
they're improving.
So we use AI in our process every single day. Like every single person on my team is using AI for literally everything all the time. It helps with everything from just drafting emails to fixing grammar to just ideation to social posts and getting ideas to helping with it's crazy the amount of things that it helps do in a day-to-day business. But talking about transformation and talking about like how do you build new tools and how do you come up with those things, it's the change is incredible. Even from a year ago, from 2 years ago, we've been using them for years. We use them all the time, and the newest versions are just they're mind-blowing already. I can't imagine what it's going to be like a year from now. It's already like I go tell it a problem and it's just everything. Like we had an issue figuring out, and this is going to sound kind of, we had an issue figuring out the WhatsApp business setup, right? Because we do a lot, we work with Latin American talent. Everybody uses WhatsApp. So if WhatsApp business, like everybody uses that. So my entire team needs access to WhatsApp business. And we do all our chatting with our talent from that. And, it all comes back to, it goes back into our system and goes into our CRM. It's a whole thing. But we had to figure out the correct access pathway for that because it's kind of opaque. It's not very clear. And Meta doesn't make it very clear, and they don't make it real obvious how you do this. And it doesn't really it doesn't connect well, and it's kind of a mess, to be honest. And I had all these issues, and you're trying to figure it out, and you have like team members working on it and stuff, and then you just take all this problem set and you put it into ChatGPT and Gemini, and they both give you an answer that's kind of close to each other and kind of gives you an idea of here's the thing that it looks like you need to do. And then you can go back and go, okay, how do we implement this? And then you have to, you have to rebuild your system in order for it to work the way it's supposed to work now. But, just any kind of problem like that, it's a thing that shouldn't be a problem, right? It's a built tool. It's a built communication platform. It should work the way it's supposed to work. But it doesn't, because
sometimes it happens.
Because you set it up incorrectly from the start. So that's my fault. Like the way you set it up when you're first starting, and you go, okay, I need this tool, I need it to work here. It's built. It does this thing over here. And then a year later, you're like, oh well, that wasn't the correct way to do it. And now there's 10 people using it this way, and now it's a huge problem. And so it's that same kind of thing with everything. You go into it and say, okay, well, I have this entire process that runs here. How do I make that better? How do I make that work in this particular way? Like, here's my problem with this process. What does it look like to make that problem go away? Like, what is a solution for that problem? And how does that solution fit into the other things I'm doing? And currently we're at, we're not, I say we're as if I have anything to do with the AI. The AIs aren't currently
Everyone
there,
does.
right? They have a very basic, basic understanding of the whole of the problem, but they don't know your problem. And you're now getting to the point where, like, we're integrating all of our documents and our SharePoints and everything into an AI system that can work internally to tell people what it is that they need to know. So instead of trying to figure out which document and which flow and which SOP tells you this thing, you just ask a question and it goes, okay, well, here's the answer and here's the reference point in the documents. But you're going to get to the point where having that informational access is going to be all encompassing. Now it's going to know everything about all your systems, everything about your entire cloud infrastructure, everything about your entire backend, everything about every piece of software or tool that anybody in your organization is using. And then you get to go ask it a question of, hey, this doesn't work the way it needs to. What do I do? And it's going to go, well, here's exactly how it works currently. Here's another way you could do it. And then I think you get to next steps, hopefully, where it starts proactively doing that. I don't know when we get there, but based on the difference of the last 2 years, like, I imagine that at some point in the near future, it's going to go,
Soon.
pop up a message to you and be like, by the way, I was looking through your documentation. It says you do this. Why don't you do it this way? And you just be like, well, that's cool.
Just checking on you, right?
Yeah, hopefully.
Agree. And you mentioned about like the people that are speaking together. Like it's good that you actually mentioned this, like communicating stuff, because I think generally when we are speaking about digital transformation, it's so important to have this communication and have it as transparent as possible. So even with all this technology that we have, and even with AI, do you think that the communication is still the root of, or the base of digital transformation, or there is something else in it?
Yeah, of course. I mean, communication is everything. I mean, everything we do is between humans, right? All of this business we do, we can do all the digital transformation and launch all the AIs we want, but at the end of the day, it's, you know, it's me paying you money for something, or even if it's my system paying you money for something, like it's still human to human, it's still interactions, it's all communication. And, you know, if we have team members, assuming everything doesn't go full AI agents and then we live in some, you know, utopia or something, or dystopia, whichever way it goes, you know, it's still all communication, it's all interaction. I don't have less team members today because of AI. I have more team members because I have more efficiency, which means I can grow my business more, which means I have more clients, which means I have more people to serve, which means I have more people to communicate with. You know, at the end of the day, AI isn't very good at communicating. It's great. It seems like it is. It's a, you know, they're chat models and they chat with you and they're very interactive. But if you get on a client call and it's an AI, you immediately know still, even if they're very close. Like they're just, yeah, you're never going to have that human to human thing. But, you know, in transformation, in trying to build your business and try to build better process and better systems, like the root of all of it is still people. It's still communication between people. It still always has the same problem of communication between people that it always has. And that problem of communication is not specific to business. It's not specific to digital transformation. It's human, right? We need to talk to each other. We need to have disagreements. We need to have misunderstandings. We need to talk about those misunderstandings. We need to fix those misunderstandings and disagreements and figure out where we went wrong and how to get them correct. And that happens with everything. That happens with, you know, building new systems, because you're going to say, okay, well, here's our processes and here's my expectation set. And then you're going to give it to somebody, and guess what? Point 3 didn't mean to them what it meant to you, because it was worded a little weird. And in my head, it was very obvious, but they don't know what I know. They don't have the information I have, you know? So you're always in that struggle of like, where is the miscommunication? How do I fix it? And how do I make sure that everybody understands what I'm saying? And how do I make sure that everybody's comfortable with questioning me when they don't understand what I'm saying, or if something I say is opaque, or if, you know, it's always that same problem. It's always the same problem. It's, I said something, I knew what I meant, it didn't come out the way it was supposed to, even if it sounded to me correct at the time. That person went and did that process, right? They started building a system, and then they come back and go, okay, well, here's the documentation for the proposal. And you go, well, that doesn't do what I thought it was going to do. And they're like, what do you mean? Point 3 says X, you know? Yeah.
Agree.
And I don't know how these new systems clarify that for us. Like, it does to a point, because now I can go and I can put it into one of the models and say, hey, here's what I'm thinking. Let me know, you know, what does it look like to build this? And then it goes, okay, well, here's what a solution would look like. And you go, that doesn't seem like the right solution. And then you have to look back through what you said and fix it. And that's a much faster iteration than working with a person, right? Because a person's going to take a day to read it, and they're going to go through it, and they're going to come back, you know, another day to write up their proposal. It's just much faster.
Agree. Sometimes even like people are not saying that they didn't understand the task, they are trying to understand it, and it's taking longer. Agree.
Yeah. Great. Or if people feel somewhat like, if it's an interaction with your boss or with like your company owner or something, you're much less apt to be like, no, that I don't think that's correct, because you know, you don't want to lose your job, or you don't want to make that person angry, and you never know like what their mood is right now. You know, it's just this common human problems. It's the same thing we've dealt with forever.
Yes, agree. Definitely. Amazing. Okay, I think we are coming to my last question before we'll wrap up, and it's about like your advice to our audience. So what will be your advice to the people that are listening to us about digital transformation? Any thoughts, what they need to take into account?
Good people, great people are always an asset. You know, if you have good people around you, and then life is better. I think that's true in every aspect. I think that's true no matter digital transformation or, you know, life in general. The better people you have around you, the better results you get generally. That can be hard to do, but you know, it's not impossible. You know, you gotta have filters, you gotta know what you're looking for, you have to have a decent idea. And if you don't know what you're looking for, you gotta go try. You know, I think that's how most of us learn what a good relationship looks like, whether that's business or personal. You know, you got to go try. You got to go meet people. You got to go put feelers out there and see what's out there. For business, that means interviewing people, getting an understanding of what works well for you, setting very clear expectations. What does this mean? What does this role mean? What do I expect from this kind of person? You know, what kind of input do I need? What kind of input do they need? What kind of communication do we have? being very transparent, being very open, being open to criticism and critique. Not that I think we should all be criticizing each other, but
Mm-hmm.
if somebody thinks I'm wrong, I want them to tell me I'm wrong, because
Yeah.
generally that's going to be additive to the entire process. Like it doesn't feel good in the moment. I don't like being told I'm wrong. Of course, nobody does. But if your employees, if your contractors, if the people that are working for you don't feel comfortable in giving you their true opinion, they're not going to give you your true
Mm-hmm.
opinion. And then you're just roadblocking yourself.
Yeah.
So being clear, being transparent, and having correct
Yeah.
expectations and having great people around you is everything, I think.
Agree. Definitely very well said. So, Chris, any last words before we will end this episode? Anything from your side that you would like to mention?
Yeah, I mean, we're always here to help people find great people. It's what we do. We're WoW remote teams. We hire people from Latin America. We help you staff contract positions for literally anything. We have lots of great people in the digital transformation space, whether you need, strategists or coders or implementation specialists or architecture or DevOps. Like, we can help you find people that are really good at what they do. Again, they're all from Latin America, so they all fit really well with the time zone in the United States and Canada. So we help a lot of U.S. businesses find amazing talent, and we save them a lot of money because Latin America's the amount you're going to pay is 30-40% less than a U.S. position. But again, it's really about finding great people, and the way we work is we help people find great people. And if we don't, then that's okay. If you find great people somewhere else, then I'm glad for you. Please just work on finding the best people you can, and hopefully I can help some people find that.
Well, thank you so much for sharing your experience in digital transformation, and have a great day.
Awesome. Thank you for having me. It was a pleasure speaking with you.